Hello and welcome to this model making tutorial. My name is Andrew Shepherdson and today I'll be walking you through how to build the RiceMaiden Models version of the Star Citizen Tumbril Nova. The model is relatively easy to put together and shouldn't take you more than about 2 hours time. So let's begin. The model you can see is built in two basic parts. You have the body of the tank and you have the turret of the tank. To begin with, we're going to build the body of the tank. So if we turn off the turret, you can see that the body itself is pretty straightforward. You have some of these laser engraved parts here, and then parts that are 3D printed will be represented in green. The first step to building the Tumbril Nova model is to begin with the tracks themselves. They make up the majority of the superstructure on the body of the tank. So if we get rid of the treads and we get rid of the top pieces, you can kind of see the basic buildup of how we're going to be building the body of this tank. So first off, let's get rid of the center section and let's get rid of these end pieces. And you can see that we basically have these two, 7-layer stack ups of wood, and they're basically mirrors of each other. So if you build one, you should be able to build the other one just as a mirror of itself. One thing to note is that in the very center of this piece is this spacer, and the spacer is just an alignment tool. So if you want, you can shove it through the hole on all of these pieces and it should help align them so you don't have to do anything special. Looking at this piece, we're going to start with these two inside pieces, and they're actually, as you can see, they're these very angular hard cut pieces. And there's one difference between the two. This outer one is relatively clean, and this inner one has this cutaway on it. And this cutaway is so that when we put our tread on, the tread can go in that hole. So getting rid of the tread, the next pieces we're going to do are these the tread holders themselves. And this stack up of pieces right here is actually, so you get these two inners, which are going to be exactly the same. And then you have this outer piece, which is laser engraved with the track wheels on it. Now at this point, so let me see if I can represent where we would be at. So we get no center section, nothing on this side, and we'd basically be at this point. Now once you get to this point, I would recommend you install the tracks. The tracks are going to be these little tiny, the tread are going to be these little tiny wood pieces, and they just slot inside the grooves made in the wood. If I turn that on and off, you can see where those go. And those just go in there. And for my purposes, I just kind of slathered some glue in the holes and then just applied the tracks and, repeated till I was done. And it didn't really take a ton of time. To finish off the track portion, or the tank track portion of the body, we're going to install the last two pieces. The first is this spacer piece. And it should be pretty easy to pick out. It's noticeably smaller, but still has that alignment slot in it. And then finally, we're going to get to the outer piece, which is this big kind of roundish corner angular piece, but it has this noticeable notch in it right here, and we'll get into why that's important later. So once you're at that point, as you keep seeing me turn on, you can put on this 3D printed kind of angle piece. And this angle piece helps space off the armor panels on the outside so that we can get that angled look that we're going for. As you can kind of see it from the top down. So once you get those two pieces done, now we need to join these two halves together. And the pieces that I keep turning off are actually the center parts. Now, the two 3D printed pieces in here that are shown in green are aids. They're aids to give you something to support those wood pieces with when you're assembling it. You don't have to use that if you don't want to, but it's something that is an aid in case you're struggling to get the pieces aligned properly. Now to connect these two halves together, it's basically three pieces. You got this front angled portion, you got the flat that makes up the bottom, and you got this rear panel. And all the pieces are relatively rectangular in dimensions, so they shouldn't be that hard to pick out. Once you get those guys glued together, you can add this final bottom piece, and then you're done with the tank bottom body itself. To finish off the tank body itself, I would recommend letting this piece set so that it doesn't, do anything funny while it's drying. To put the top of the tank on, you basically get these two top pieces. So this front top piece, let's see if we can kind of give you a reference for where that guy goes. As you can see, it basically goes up to the ridge right here, the transition right here. And it's going to be the only piece that basically is laser engraved to look like this. On top, you have this flat panel with a notch cut out in the back of it. And the one notable thing about this is that it has a hole in it for the tank turret, and it's off-center. Make sure that it is off-center to the right-hand side of the tank, as if you're off-center on the left-hand side, your turret's going to be askew and it's not going to look right. Once you have that done, on the back here, you have this Nova piece, which fits into kind of this little slot in here and is kind of set down, off of these rear track covers, I guess. And then, of course, on the outside, you have these track covers, and they have a little notch in the corner, and they're angled to match this piece on the outer edge. Moving to the side, we can install the final three pieces on each side. They should be pretty easy to pick out, as if they're laser engraved, they should kind of make this pattern that you see right here. Obviously, this front piece goes on the front slope portion of the 3D printed armor guide. The middle portion goes in the middle. And, of course, the final rear piece goes on the rear portion. Those should be pretty easy to attach and should glue in place quite readily. Once you're done with that, set this thing aside. I would pop in the turret guide right here, a little 3D printed piece. It doesn't matter which way it goes since it's symmetric about the flat part on it. So once we get this guy done, we can set it aside. And now I gotta bring it back for the turret. Now the turret in and of itself is relatively straightforward, and I would recommend starting it off by building the gun portion first. As you can see, the gun itself is, let's see if we can turn this off to get a better view. So the gun portion is basically made up of these gun shape centerpieces. To start with, you're going to start with this centerpiece. Now it's going to be noteworthy because it's chunkier down here. It's not going to have this kind of concave outer portion, and it's going to have a little bitty hump here towards the top that sets it apart. Next to it on its two sides are going to be these pieces here. And they're both the same, so one goes on each side, and they're going to have this big notch cut in them right here, along with the concave gun end. Once you get those two together, on the outside of that three stack up is this piece, and again, these two pieces are the same and can be picked out by this kind of long notch section out of it down here, as well as this really sharp notch in the back. As you can see, the other piece, same piece, contains that. Finally, we have this last outer piece, and again, it is the same on both sides. So, relatively straightforward piece, one on both sides. Now, at this point, I would recommend continuing towards the left on camera right here and starting to build the tank turret that way. as you can see, if I get rid of some of this stuff, we contain more ribbing this way, and it's pretty easy to attach and grow off of it. The first piece is this really long, let's just get rid of the turret for now, and we're going to show you that the first piece we have is this pretty nondescript long piece with a slanty cut in the back. On top of that, we're going to have the first of our kind of this front rib section. Now, as you can see, these two pieces here, the one on towards the piece we just assembled and the outer one, are both the same. And then sandwiched in between them is this kind of fast notch piece that follows the same rear geometry but doesn't have quite the same front geometry. Now, as you can see in this video, all this stuff kind of lines up with itself. So as you can see on the bottom here, all of these pieces, this kind of ledge right here lines up with that one big main piece we attached to the turret guns. So as you can see, here's the turret gun itself, and then that one new piece we added. So once we get that going, we're going to start building this stack up. As you can see, the first thing we're going to do is put in this bottom piece. So it's a relatively unique piece. It has that cutout hole that'll accept the adapter we put into the body, and it fits nicely in this kind of cutout created by the pieces we just glued together. Once we get that done, we're gonna start building up the interior of this piece. So on the rear end, we can put this 3D printed spacer, and it's going to follow relatively closely the curvature of this piece we just installed, as well as those ribs that we had a few minutes ago. On the front side, we're going to install these guys. Now, they're all roughly the same, as you can kind of see. They just sit on top of that piece, and their front position is roughly the interior of this notch here. As you can see, they all have this notch, is roughly in line with the notch in those kind of forward heatsink things that we've installed. As you can see, the pieces get shorter in length. Actually, we'll be building up, so the pieces will get longer in length as we build upwards. So really the only way to build this is to grab all four of these pieces from your parts kit and just kind of hold them together and figure out which one is the shortest, which one's the longest, and just glue them in order. Once you get all those pieces down, we're ready to install the side panels and the top on this part of the turret. Actually, I didn't mean to delete all that. So on the side, we're going to have this square piece and a round guy, and then we have this kind of whoops, didn't mean to get rid of that. We're going to have this this kind of triangular piece here that fits in, and you can tell what it is because it's going to have a vertical interface with this square piece, and it's going to have a notch that follows the notch in our center rib. After that, we can pop the top pieces on. In the back is going to be this triangle piece this triangular piece that's going to fit right in. And then on top here, we're going to have this base piece, and it should just sit right on top. It should fit within the notch we've created on these front heat sinks, should go against our center rib, and should go against the square piece we've previously installed. As you can see, there's a bit of a gap here to give you kind of a rounded look overall. And finally, on top of here, we have this kind of decorative piece that goes roughly towards the back. We have this other decorative piece that goes roughly towards the front right. And then we have another round piece that our 3D printed twin turret sits on. Hopping back over to the other side, we don't have much left to go. To begin building this side, we're going to build this stack up right here. As you can see, this stack up kind of cradles the gun portion of the turret and is relatively easy to put together. To start with, we're going to have this kind of hook-shaped piece, and then right above it we're going to have a slightly larger hook-shaped piece. Above it we're going to have this stack up of 3 dogleg pieces that go forward. As you can see, the first 2 are the same, but the third one is slightly longer. So the only way you're going to be able to figure that out is just to hold all 3 pieces together, figure out which one has the longer dogleg to it. And then finally on top we have this dogleg piece, but it's shorter in overall size and gives us a nice ledge for the rockets. So once you get all of those together, you should be at this point. And that should just glue straight against this center rib and then also glue against the gun and fit nicely together. As you can see, it's a little bit lower than this, but you know, you can just play around with it and see what looks good. Finally, we're going to attach this side piece. As you can see, it's As you can see, it's unique in shape and fits nicely with the kind of hook portion of these bottom pieces and fits against the kind of rear end geometry of those upper pieces. On the front here, we're going to be building this boxed section. As you can see, up top we have this kind of really sharp angled piece that goes on top and kind of angles forward a little bit. On the bottom we have this sharp angle but noticeably shorter piece, and it kind of fits between, you know, it's angled sharp up, it fits in this little crack here and just kind of fits snugly against that piece. And then finally on the outside we got this relatively normal looking geometry piece that fits in to kind of complete the look of the tank. And finally, what I forgot, there's another round piece here on the side. Now towards the back we're going to put our rockets on. The rockets have a nice little notch in them right here, and that notch, as you can see, interacts with the stack up of parts we had here. It gives it a little shelf to sit on. As you can see, the slope portion back here is the back side. So if you get this backwards for whatever reason, just look to make sure that that slope portion is towards the back and this narrower section is towards the front on, you know, both sides. And once you do that, that should be the you got to put the turret on the body. So as I pointed out earlier, the turret and the body both intersect with this adapter piece, so you should be able to just set that guy down on there and glue it in and have a finished Tumbril Nova. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, till the next video, I will see you then.